What is going on, guys? It's Sloppy Saturdays back here with another episode. And today we are going over our top picks of the later rounds. Now, when I mean later rounds, I just mean outside of the first round. But we got like 15 picks here covering all rounds after the first round. We got second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth round picks for each. Now, like I said, if you guys love draft coverage, this is the place to be. We got a full draft episode out for you guys. We got breaking down first round grades. We got individual players. We're going all in on the draft this month. So tune in to find out more and more draft coverage of sleepers, of guys that were overrated in every single round. You're going to hear everything on this channel. Now, without a further ado, let's get into it. We're heading into the second round with three draft picks that I really like. First pick, we actually have all defense in the second round. We got Nick Emmanwori going to the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Nick Emmanwori, I think he is the perfect player for the modern day NFL. We continuously talk about on this channel how players are being asked to do more and more things. Nick Emmanwori was a guy that started out his college career as a linebacker. He turned into a safety. He goes to Carolina. This guy is a guy that could play all over the field. Like I said, he could rush the passer or he could stay back in coverage. He reminds me a lot of Cam Chancellor, which I love for the Seattle team and the Seattle fans, even though nobody from that coaching staff is from those days. I'm pretty sure Nick Emmanwori is going to be that type of player for them. Now, not only that, he goes to a loaded secondary where he really could fit in nicely and not have the pressure to, make an immediate impact right away. When you talk about Julian Love, Devin Witherspoon, Tarek Woolen, these are guys that could really mentor him. Not only that, he brings a different type of versatility to this team. And I think it was the perfect pick for Seattle as well. You take Nick Emmanwori, who drops for you. We know your first need was offensive line, as that was a big problem last year. They take an offensive lineman in the first round. Go Nick Emmanwori in the second round. I absolutely love it. Next up at pick 15, technically 47, but pick 15 in the second round. The Arizona Cardinals go with Will Johnson. Now, how could I not love this pick? If you guys have been watching this channel, you have seen that I am in love with Will Johnson as a player. When we were talking about him, we were talking about him as a potential top 6, a top 7 pick all year. Now, his injuries, apparently, they are legit. He drops all the way to the second round. Again, I mentioned it in another video. This is going to go one of two ways. Either his injuries are really legit and the teams that stayed off him are going to benefit, or everybody was overreacted and the Arizona Cardinals got a great player. But for a guy that I thought was the best cornerback in the draft, yes, I'm talking about the best cornerback in the draft based off his college tape, even over Travis Hunter. I get Travis Hunter could do both, but I thought this guy was the best traditional corner. When you talk about his size on the outside, no receiver is going to be too big or too big of a challenge for him. I thought with his college tape on his Michigan defense that has been great his whole entire career. Again, they won a national championship, even though they weren't great total as a team. We saw what they did against Ohio State. They were a great defensive unit. I thought Will Howard was the best traditional corner. And again, if I was Arizona, who needed the secondary help, who I think really nailed the draft in the later rounds, I would 100% take a chance on Will Johnson. This is too good of a talent to drop this far. Everybody likes to talk about Shedeur Sanders and other people dropping. This guy I thought was the best value at his pick. Again, we will see how the injuries turn out. Again, I can't predict that. I'm not in the medical room. I don't know what type of injuries he has. I know he was hampered all year this year, but Will Johnson, I think the best traditional corner, arguably the best secondary player in this entire draft. And then at pick 19, pick 51 in the second round, Carolina goes with Nick Scordon. I absolutely love Nick Scordon in this pick as well. I thought Nick Scordon was one of the best players in college football last year. I thought he was a wrecker on the edge. I thought he was more of an impact player than his guy on the other side, Shamar Stewart, for his Texas A&M defense. And he just fell because of character concerns. It happens to 1, 2, 3 people every year. The character concerns drop them back. This is what happened with Nick Scordon. But I really thought Nick Scordon was a top 15 talent, especially when you talk about an edge rusher and the impact they could have on a defense. And for a team like Carolina, I thought they nailed the first 2 rounds. When you talk about positions of impact, they take Ted McMillan, who I believe was better than his pick as well. But not only that, could really make Bryce Young take that next step. and they get a defensive player at a position that's going to completely impact the defense, who I felt like also dropped. So for a really bad team, two positions of impact, two players that really dropped. I absolutely love this pick for the Carolina Panthers. Now we get into the third round where things get a little more interesting. The team that I thought had the best draft, we're going with the New York Giants and Darius Alexander. Pick one in the third round, pick 65 total. Darius Alexander was a guy that I thought could have went early second. Not only that, he could have went in the back end of the first as well, as he was better than some players in the first round. They get him in the third round. Granted, it was the first pick, but I absolutely love it. This is a guy that you could stick in the middle right next to Dexter Lawrence, can learn from Dexter Lawrence. But not only that, the Giants are giving themselves an identity to win. When we look at this front seven, it is absolutely ridiculous and loaded with depth. You add Darius Alexander in there now. We just mentioned Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeaux, and the number 3 overall pick, Abdul Carter. This defense is going to be absolutely filthy. And I think the Giants with this draft, not only have they gave themselves an identity, they patched up a lot of holes. Their whole entire defensive unit really looks solid right now. Their pass rush really looks like it could be the best in the league. And then again, their offense maybe could come together as soon as next year. They do have one of the best offensive players in the league, and Malik Nabers. He's going to be one of the best offensive players in the league for years to come. They draft their quarterback. But again, this team, the way things fell to them at the picks they had, again, I thought they handled everything so perfectly. Darius Alexander gets added to this loaded defense already. And for a Giants team that has 5.5 wins, I think they have a lot of talent. That I'm my bad. That is projected to have 5.5 wins as their win total. I think they have a lot of talent. I'm sorry, I kind of messed up the word in there. Next up at pick 1983, Caleb Johnson goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thought Caleb Johnson at this pick was an absolute steal. We told you guys all year long the running backs that drop in this class are going to be steals because this class is so loaded. Now, Caleb Johnson could really be that lead back for the Pittsburgh Steelers day one. You could argue as a downhill runner, he's as good as anybody in the draft. Let's look at his college football stats. Last year, you're talking about 1,537 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns. This guy was a bell cow on an Iowa offense that we know does not like to pass the ball. Now he's going to be taking that Najee Harris role, which I think it was so perfect for them to get off Najee Harris. You get Caleb Johnson, who's a lot younger, a lot fresher. He's a downhill runner that isn't a receiving back. And now you have Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Walker behind him, who could be your scat backs and your receiving backs. But Caleb Johnson could definitely be a bell cow. I thought he was one of the best running backs, one of the best players in college football. He was an all-American talent last year. And I think, like I said, with how loaded this running back class is, he could compete with people that were drafted in the second round at that position. I think that was the perfect falling for him. Next up, we go Xavier Watts. He comes in. He had 13 picks in 2 seasons for Notre Dame. This was a guy that was one of the leaders of a Notre Dame defense. And I think Xavier Watts is really going to shore up their secondary for Atlanta. Atlanta, another team that I think had a really good draft. But not only that, a team that was drafting pretty low that I think doesn't have as many holes as they should have. Xavier Watts, I thought he was one of the best players on Notre Dame. A Notre Dame team that was really, really good this year. And I think they got a great college player, and now he falls, and he's going to be a really good pro as well. Going on to Notre Dame team, in the 4th round, we got Jack Kaiser to Jacksonville. I thought he was the best player on this Notre Dame team. We're talking about a guy with 90 tackles total last year and a leader on that defense. Again, it's very weird how players drop, how like players that were one of the best players in college football drop so far in the NFL draft. People don't think they're going to work out nearly as well in the NFL, which could be true, but I think the 4th round for Jack Kaiser was an absolute steal. And somebody on the same theme, we have Jack Sawyer to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, Pittsburgh Steelers get a position of impact in an edge rusher, and Jack Sawyer, one of the best player on the national champion Ohio State team. I think this was a steal. Again, we talk about a guy with a lot of heart. We had him as one of the biggest plays of the year against Quinn Ewers and Texas. I thought, again, one of the best players in college football that people may not think is going to work out in the NFL. But in the 4th round, let's take that chance on Jack Sawyer. At pick 24, 126, I was battling putting this pick on just because I really don't like how the Browns doubled up on positions with quarterbacks and running backs for a team that was drafted second and has a lot of needs. Dylan Sampson, I just had to put on here though. Pick 24, 126. Dylan Sampson was an absolute stud this year. He completely took over that Tennessee offense. Nico Iamaleava was a guy that we thought was going to explode coming into the year. He did it, and Dylan Sampson was the focal point of offense. Again, you're really talking about a running back that doesn't really specialize in the pass catching game. Again, he's more of a traditional runner, and he is a little small. But pairing up him with Quinshon Judkins, I thought was the icing on the cake because Quinshon Judkins, we know, is a serious threat in the receiving game. And Dylan Sampson, as being a pure runner, those two guys together are really going to complement each other well. And in a loaded running back class, I thought the Cleveland Browns got two really good players with their later pick. And at pick 34, 136 in the fourth round, we're going with Alik Ayumana to Tennessee. Alik Ayumana is, I think, one of the most underrated players in college football all throughout his career. When you talk about Alik Ayumana, this really a guy with like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a huge game against Travis Hunter. One of the guys that absolutely tore up Travis Hunter. I think he's a traditional X receiver at his size. He reminds me of a little bit worse Tetairoa McMillan. And I think he's a great receiver that was just in a horrible situation. When you look at Stanford, one of the worst Power 4 teams in college football last year, he didn't really have a lot of opportunities. He was bracketed like the whole entire year. But I think this pick for Tennessee is absolutely perfect because I feel like people are not really talking about the situation Cam Ward is going into. Yes, he has guys like Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard, but those guys are really on the back nine. Those guys aren't as good as their prime years, and he's really going to need weapons to step up. We saw them take DK early in this round. Now they take Alik Ayumana. I absolutely love them taking offensive weapons for Cam Ward, and I think Alik Ayumana, like I said, is a sleeper. Next up, we got Mitchell Evans going to the Carolina Panthers. Now, there's two reasons I really love this pick in Mitchell Evans. One, I think outside of Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, I think Mitchell Evans is in the second tier of tight ends. And I think the Panthers really made a great move not going for a guy like Fannin Jr., Mason Taylor. Those guys drafted him 2 rounds early with a significant pick. I think Mitchell Evans is right there with them. Now, Mitchell Evans, a guy that could definitely block in the run as Notre Dame was a very big run-heavy team this year. But not only that, he was one of their main options on offense as a pass catcher. You could argue their main option. I really like Mitchell Evans. I think pairing him up with Bryce Young, getting Bryce Young just more and more help, I think was the right move. And I think they're getting a ton of value here, like I said, with tight ends drafted earlier in the second round. I don't think that was the move. I think Mitchell Evans in the same tier. I thought this was a great pick. Now we're going with Denzel Burke, also going to the Arizona Cardinals in the secondary. We all know Arizona needs to load up on defense. We all know that was their main need. I thought Denzel Burke was an absolute steal in the 5th round. When you talk about Denzel Burke, we're talking about, again, one of the best players on Ohio State the last 2 years. A guy that had very tough assignments, had to guard teams' best receivers in a major conference. I thought Denzel Burke was a really good pick here, especially with the needs of Arizona. But not only that, this guy has great ball skills as well. When you talk about him in high school, he was a receiver. I think he could really follow routes extremely well. And I think in a secondary that needed a lot of help, they got the best value they could have got at cornerback with Will Johnson and Denzel Burke. Thought that was an absolute steal. In the 6th round now, we're going with Ollie Gordon to the Miami Dolphins. I absolutely love this pick because I really feel like with Ollie Gordon, you're getting him at his lowest point. When we talk about Ollie Gordon the year before last, this guy was ahead of Ashton Jetti. This guy had over 2,000 total yards, 22 touchdowns. He looked like he was going to be a first-round pick in this year's draft. He had a really slow year. Again, did he lose a burst? I'm not really too sure. He was in a horrible situation. They didn't have a quarterback. They had one of the worst offensive lines. I think if you could get some of what you got out of Ollie Gordon the year before last, you could be looking at an all-time steal in the 6th round. We're looking at Ollie Gordon have one of the best running back seasons we have seen in college football in the modern era. Ollie Gordon, I think, was an absolute stealer. Going along with the Dolphins, in the 7th round, Quinn Ewers, I never thought I would say this in my life. Complete steal. When you look at Quinn Ewers out of high school, highly rated prospect ever for 247 Sports at the quarterback position. Then he goes to Ohio State. He really doesn't get an opportunity there. Goes to Texas. He does solid there, but never really got what we thought we were going to get out of him. He was rumored to be a first round pick for the longest time. He could have stayed in school, got more money, but that's a whole nother scenario. We have a whole video out on that. But Quinn Ewers, a guy that was going to be a former first round pick, getting him in the seventh round just because he was the quarterback to fall and put him in behind Tua. Again, not only do I think they're very similar in quarterbacks, but he could very well get an opportunity and be an insurance policy for Tua. Think you're getting Quinn Ewers at his lowest point. I absolutely love it. And then for the last pick, kind of a homer pick for me, but pick 19, 235, Tez Johnson to the Buccaneers. I absolutely love it. Again, kind of similar, like we've been saying in this video. You're getting one of the best players in college football. I get it. Tez Johnson, a very small receiver when you talk about his weight. And not only that, he's not the fastest receiver either. But I really think this guy can run routes well. I think he's solid after the catch. And this is a receiver that has been doing it in a major conference against major defensive backs. Again, the last 2 years, he was on the number one team in college football for most of the season, and he was arguably their best talent on offense. I think Ted Johnson was a steal. Will he get an opportunity for the Buccaneers? I am not so sure. That raw receiver room is absolutely loaded. Talk about Jalen McMillan last year, and then you got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Mecca Buka. Will he get on the field? Who knows? I absolutely love that pick, though. That wraps up my favorite picks of the later rounds in this NFL draft. Like I said, continuously tune into us because we are going over draft coverage all month. We covered it for 3 months for you guys before the draft. We're going to keep covering it after you guys. Who are the steals? Who are the underrated players? Who are the overrated players? We are going over everything in every round. Again, we're not a channel that just goes over the first round. We're going over throughout the NFL draft as we are a college football channel. We were covering all rounds for you guys because we watched all these guys in college all year. So we love that. That wraps up this episode.